Hello and welcome to Hamilton the Podcast. I'm Vinton Bain.
And I'm Robbie Herlocker.
And I have bad news.
What? You didn't tell me this.
Yep. I'm moving.
Oh, you did tell me. Never mind. Yeah.
So, right now, half of my house is in boxes. Well,
not the house.
Not the house itself. The things in the house.
Right. There are a lot of boxes. I thought you were just going for a new decorative theme here with the right angles and the sculptures of cardboard.
Yep. I call it in limbo. But that means that we're pretty busy here. My studio space is about to be all torn down. And by that, I mean my dining room table with lots of mics hooked up to it and the mixer board and a big computer.
We're professionals.
Yeah, super professional. Who would ever doubt that? But because I'm going to be moving and have a lot of my plate going on, we're going to be taking a small break.
Take a break.
For this week, because we're not going to be doing a full episode right now. This episode you're listening to is going to be a short special. And then next week, there probably won't be anything that comes out, but we might drop some kind of a reminder for what we're doing the week after. We'll see.
That's right. The week after, we have a thing that we have been waiting for a very long time.
Wait for it.
Wait for it. PBS documentary about Hamilton.
Woo! That's my response. I'm pretty excited. We're going to be watching that. We're probably going to be live tweeting it. And keep an eye out on our Twitter. We might come up with a hashtag or something for you to follow if you want to follow us live tweeting it. We'd love to live tweet with you. So definitely do that. But we will then be recording an episode after we watch it, just sharing our thoughts and about everything that goes on. We don't know fully what to expect because we haven't seen it yet. So I can't tell you fully what we're going to be talking about.
Hamilton's America is the name of the documentary that will air on PBS on Friday night, October 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be watching it at 8 Central. Because that's how time zones work, Vinton.
Yep. It is. And time zones always confuse me because I never take the time to just remember what time zones where.
Oh, yeah?
I always just have to look it up.
No, I always remember when I was watching shows as a kid, they would say, hey, this show comes on at 7 Central. And so I'd always remember 8 is the Eastern time, 7 is where it is here. So I'd remember that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west by the times that shows started and were announced. It was weird. It just clicked in my mind at that point.
Mostly, it's just when people say the time and I forget where they are located. They're like, oh, it's at 9. I'm like, oh, cool. Hey, this thing's not on. Oh, you're not in my time zone.
Oh, yeah. Do you ever get that way when you're traveling? When you get your plane tickets? Like, okay, I'm supposed to land at 5. I'm taking off at 3. So it's just going to be a 2-hour flight. And I get there in 1 hour.
Yep.
What?
And I have family in Michigan, so sometimes I'd call them and I'd be like, yeah, it's just, it's 9 o'clock here. It's 10 o'clock here and we're in bed. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know who goes to bed at 10. Whatever.
I actually don't remember the last time I went to bed in the PM lately. This week has been crazy. It's been so wild. I've gone to bed in the single digits for a while. So like we said, the next thing we're getting together to do is the Hamilton documentary coverage for Hamilton the Podcast. Between now and then, if you haven't already listened to our Patreon exclusive that deals with a lot of listener questions that were mailed into us or sent to us on Twitter or through text messages from people we knew, we would love to invite you to go to patreon.com/graphocast, and you can donate as little as $1 a month to get access to the exclusive recordings that Vinton will drop every single month for you. And to give you a little bit of a taste of what that was like, we did have a couple questions come to us a little bit too late to get into that exclusive recording. So we would like to cover those questions now.
So our friend Dalton Stewart, who some people might know from the Good Trash Media Network. And if you don't, go check out the Good Trash Media Network.
They review movies and they have such intelligent conversations about them. Their critiques are so well done. I love everything they do.
Yeah, but it's also fun. It's not just a lot of highbrow conversations.
Right. It's approachable.
So,
like you could have a beer with them.
Yeah, right. Raise a glass to films. I don't know what I'm doing now. Hey. So, Dalton Stewart sent us some questions. His first one says, other than A. Ham and A. Burr, who could carry their own musical? And because of a later question, I read this to mean someone in the musical. Like, who else in the musical could carry their own musical?
Right. I think that's what he means.
So, Robbie, what do you think?
Well, that's a great question. With so many large named characters in this musical, we could go so many different directions with this. Obviously, Jefferson has a lot to say. I mean, if we covered the Jefferson presidency, we'd see a lot of cool things with Lewis and Clark, not Lois and Clark. And then you get to see the Tripoli Pirates. Which
yeah, musical with pirates.
Yeah, I love musicals with pirates. The Pirates
American
of Penzance.
history musical with pirates.
I'm sold. Yep, I am there. Man. That could be fun.
Another big character from the musical, obviously, George Washington.
Oh my goodness. That was actually who my mind went to first when I read that question. I would love to see a musical based on just George Washington and his spy networks.
Yeah.
If you focus on Hercules Mulligan and, okay, picture this, Cato, the musical.
Ooh.
Cato, if you do not know, was Hercules Mulligan's slave, and he partnered with Hercules to go into a lot of places where African Americans were able to be overlooked, and he got a lot of the spy intel that Hercules Mulligan was able to turn over to George Washington to help the colonists. Cato is a forgotten person in history for a lot of people, and he was actually a black revolutionary character who, as a person of color, did an amazing thing for these United States as we were starting out. Yet, he's not represented in Hamilton, an American musical, and instead, Hercules Mulligan, his white slave owner, is made into a black character in this musical. And so there's some interesting racial dynamics happening on the stage, I think. But Cato, the musical, man, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. Another one for me would be Peggy. You know, that one big event that happened to Peggy that we all really love. I would call the musical Peggy and the Tomahawk.
Peggy and the Tomahawk. It's a one act, right?
Yeah, it's just one. It's a real short musical, maybe 20 minutes, but it has about 20 songs in it.
I'm throwing the tomahawk. He's totally throwing the tomahawk.
Yeah, the opening number. It's just a normal day at Mom and Pop's. Nothing's going on. And then the second song. It's not so much a normal day. There's someone at the door. I think it's an army. I don't know. Just some thoughts.
I'm loving it.
I can't sing. I don't know why I was trying to sing.
No, that was great.
Everyone's ears are bleeding.
You've been in more bands than I have.
Yeah, not the type where you sound pretty. So the next one that Dalton asked us was, what is another forgotten historical figure that should have their story told?
That's a really great question. What are you thinking?
You know, when I read this question, I just realized he didn't actually say this, but when I read this question, I heard in musical form. So all of mine are in musical form.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be musical.
So my first thought, because I'm not very political minded, I just immediately go to my favorite actor, Buster Keaton.
What is his story?
Here's the thing. You couldn't do it. I'd really want to do it in a silent musical way, but that'd be really hard because it's a musical. And that's just really compromising the idea of a musical. So I'm not sure what to do there. But he had a really interesting life. Like the fact that he got his nickname Buster from Houdini because he would fall downstairs all the time and just laugh it off. And because of him being so well at falling, when he was a little baby, there's also a story about him being sucked out of the window by a tornado and they just found him in the street laughing because he was just so good at falling. He's fine with it.
What?
Yep. As a baby, just laughing in the street after getting sucked out of a window by a tornado.
Whee!
I don't know if there's actually historical proof about that, but it's in his biographies. So, you know,
Weird.
Whatever. But because of all that, his father would then throw him across the stage because he was a vaudeville performer and he would just throw his son across the stage and he would tumble and then stand up and be like, ta-da!
What era was this? What years?
So this would be the very end of the 1800s. 1895 is when Buster Keaton was born. So sometime around there, and I'm sure it went on for a little bit before he then started performing on his own as he grew up and he became one of the most recognizable silent film actors. And he's really famous for doing all of his own stunts and doing insane stunts, even by today's standards, like hanging onto a moving train and running all over it and letting logs fall and almost kill him while he flips under the train and tries to get away from them. Did all of his own stunts in a day where there's no stuntman, there's no harnesses, you just gotta survive.
Wow.
One of his famous scenes is where a side of a house falls and he's standing in front of it and he just falls right into the opening of the house and just stands there. He lets the side of the house falls.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, of course, if you're on your mark and everything, but things can go wrong.
Right, yeah.
But I've just always loved Buster Keaton, old stone face. He's got a great face. He's got great expressions and oh man, he's so good. I want a musical.
That could be fun. I wonder if in this musical they hire an actual stuntman to be the lead.
Oh, yeah. That's another good idea. We should let stuntmen be actors more often. Like
of
main
course.
actors, lead actors.
Yeah, they're too frequently just in the subnotes of the credits.
So, Robbie, what's one that you came up with?
Yeah, it was hard to limit myself because once I started going down the rabbit trail of thinking of other historical figures I wanted in musical form, I just kept going, and it was interesting. I think Mary Wollstonecraft would be a fun one to look into.
Yeah.
She was, connecting it to Hamilton, Aaron Burr had a portrait of her above his mantelpiece for a while, and he often quoted her, thought that she was a wonderful thinker and a rational writer. She wrote Vindication of the Rights of Woman, and she was seen as one of the founding feminist philosophers of the entire feminist movement. But she also had a lot of really unconventional personal relationships. She had 2 ill-fated affairs. She was married to the guy who eventually became one of the forefathers of the anarchist movement, which is kind of interesting. And she died at the age of 38, 11 days after giving birth to her second daughter, who grew up to write the book Frankenstein. Mary Shelley, also known as Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin.
You've convinced me. I want this musical.
This would be pretty fun, I think. Another person that came straight to my mind is someone that's still living, obviously, is Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, yeah.
Notorious RBG.
Yeah, living people can be historical figures, especially someone with that much of a life story to tell involving American politics.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, she is someone whose life does embody hip-hop, even though she doesn't look like the hip-hop person. We have called her Notorious RBG for a reason after
That's
Notorious
right.
B.I.G. This is someone who has risen up into places where women are not usually respected, at least when she was going to law school. She was one of the only women in her class, and she was able to rise up and take a place of prominence there. She was able to fight for women's rights, fight as a lawyer for the American Civil Liberties Union, and she did some incredible things before getting appointed to the Supreme Court and doing some wonderful things there. But as I was thinking about this, I remembered that there is a comic opera released in the last few years called Scalia Ginsburg, about the relationship between Justice Ginsburg and the late Justice Scalia, one of the most conservative voices on the court at the time and one of the most liberal voices on the court, and how the two of them together didn't ever see eye to eye, but they did love each other as friends, and they got along together, and they went to the opera together. And so that opera exists in itself, where you already get to see some musical format of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life. And I don't think, I've not actually seen that comic opera, but I don't think that opera covers her whole life. I think it just covers their relationship between Scalia and Ginsburg themselves.
Right, that would make sense.
Did you have anyone else for your list?
Yeah, I had a couple more. So the next one I thought of was one of my favorite creative geniuses in the world, and that's Jim Henson.
Oh my
And if
goodness.
you were going to make a musical about Jim Henson, of course it would have to star the Muppets.
Of course.
So I'm thinking of Muppets of all the different people in his life and him in the musical.
So is this going to be like Avenue Q style, where you have the puppeteer and the puppets on the stage together?
Ooh, I don't know. Maybe. That seems like a good idea. I was thinking of having like a Jim Henson puppet, and of course puppets of anyone else that was involved in his life, just telling that story like it was a Muppet movie. But then I also thought it'd be funny to have, what if Kermit played Jim Henson?
Oh
rather
my
than Jim
goodness.
Henson playing Kermit? I thought that would be a good idea.
I love that. I love when they do things like that. A Muppet Christmas Carol is still one of my favorite Christmas carols.
Yeah. So my first two were obviously really Hollywood centric. So I had to get away from that and think of someone else historical that I admired and that thought would be really good for a musical. And I thought of Nikola Tesla.
Oh my goodness.
But I don't think we can have this happen because the perfect person to play Nikola Tesla passed away this year. David Bowie, who portrayed him in The Prestige. Perfect as Nikola Tesla. And I just don't know if I could be happy with anyone else doing a singing version of Nikola Tesla.
That is very sad, but I still want that musical.
Right. And my last one, because I wanted to connect something to Hamilton the musical, of course, I picked a Aaron Burr relative, Jonathan Edwards himself, in a musical called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God.
Sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Yeah, it's probably a metal musical.
I'd imagine
honestly.
so.
I don't know. It's a rock opera, at least. So, Robbie, you had a few more, didn't you?
I mean, I had a couple that were on my list. I may limit some of them down, but one person that I think is very influential that should have her story told more frequently is Helen Keller. This is someone we know a lot, but this is one story I would not have considered until I saw Spring Awakening last year, because you see in that musical these deaf cast members who are signing their roles, and then someone out of the spotlight is singing their inner monologue so that the audience can hear what is happening there. And I think it would be fascinating to watch this girl who grows up in isolation, who's deaf and blind, blossom as she learns to communicate, grows to understand the world and start thinking, and is able to get a degree and is able to become an outspoken campaigner for women's suffrage, labor rights, a lot of anti-militarism and other causes that are really, really powerful causes. This is a wonderfully impressive woman who was able to stand up and overcome way more adversity than I will ever have to face in my life.
Yeah, I mean, we all know her pretty well, but I think that counts because there's a lot that can be told there, and there's a lot that we don't know. And if I get to pick Jim Henson and Nikola Tesla and Buster Keaton, who are all people that are fairly well known, yet I think aren't known well enough. I'm huge fans of them, and I think there's a lot in their lives that we don't know. People just connect them to things like Jim Henson. He's the guy who created the Muppets. What else do you know about him? Well, he created the Muppets. So I think that counts.
And I won't bore all of our listeners with the many, many names that I came up with on my list of potential people I would love to have a musical about, because let's face it, I would just love for everyone's story to be a musical. Life would be so much better if the whole world were operating on musical rules.
Right. Like improv everywhere. Just start musicals wherever you go.
That's kind of what I do with my life, though. One other event, though, that I think, in addition to the Revolutionary War era, would also be worth telling in musical format would be, I'd love to see the Protestant Reformation fleshed out. Not just the story of Martin Luther, as it often is told, but let's see a story that takes all of these Protestant leaders together, along with some of their Roman Catholic counterparts, with Erasmus of Rotterdam in there, and John Calvin in there, and Ulrich Zwingli in there together, singing about their perspectives on what is happening in the world. I mean, some of those perspectives are so diverse, yet historically we look back and look at it like all of these Protestants are just rebelling directly against the Catholic Church for one reason or one reason alone, and it's interesting to look at some of their diverse things. I mean, you could have Ulrich Zwingli being the comic relief, because this is the guy who said that when the Bible says you should sing and make music to the Lord in your heart, it doesn't say use your lips. So he had his whole congregation sit silently for a whole service thinking in their hearts about the words to their worship songs. And so it'd be kind of interesting to see him go into that, or having a whole conversation around the table with Calvin and Zwingli and Martin Luther just arguing about how the Eucharist should be celebrated, or whether it is the literal body of Jesus, or whether it is metaphorical or figurative. And there could be a lot of fun things in there. I think that'd be a musical I'd enjoy writing with my own passions.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great one, because as you touched on, we like to summarize history into these simple ideas. It's usually more complicated than that.
Yeah, I'm imagining it fitting into something along the lines of the 1776 musical, where you see that there were a lot of different perspectives among the signers of the Declaration of Independence, even though we see them as one unified force, and intentionally so. That's what they wanted us to get out of that document. But it's interesting to look back on these other historical moments. I mean, we could talk about the Great Awakenings in the United States, or we could talk about the Civil War in the United States and what's happening there. We could talk about a lot of different events in American and world history that could really be monumental if we just told them in a new format. And so one thing that this question is bringing up in my mind, though, is that even though these are all people I would love to see in musical form, one thing I love about Hamilton is that I went into the musical not knowing a lot about him to begin with.
Yeah.
So I would love to see other people make musicals about people I don't know about yet, that I haven't studied about yet.
More of that.
So that I can learn through a really fun medium. So we've answered this question more than Dalton probably wanted in the first place, but what else does he have on his list?
Yeah, so final question here is one that I think we may have touched on before, but we've never actually fully delved into, which is, how did we meet? You and I as hosts.
Yeah, I almost forgot that was one of the questions he asked.
To my knowledge, and I have a really bad memory, so you'll have to correct me, I was going to a house church type thing with some friends that I met, and we were there hanging out and you showed up one day.
Yeah.
And I was just hanging out and we became friends.
I think this was back in the end of 2009.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds about
Something
right.
like that.
7 years ago or so.
Yeah. So it was, I think there was some like holiday break from college. It was my last semester of college. I just come out of a 3.5-year relationship. I was feeling a little lonely. I was leaving a church where I'd been working for a long time. I just kind of started plugging into Frontline Church downtown in Oklahoma City, but I wasn't really connected to anybody there. And my friend Thomas actually called me up one night and he said, "Hey, I'm going to this house church thing, and these people seem pretty cool. I think you would enjoy coming along with us, with me and my wife. We're going tonight. You want to just tag along?" So I thought, I don't know, I kind of want to introvert. I kind of just want to not go. And then I happened to tag along. He overwhelmed me. He brought me along, and I came. And I remember walking into this house church setting where a bunch of college-aged people, guys and girls, were sitting in a circle in a living room, kind of bunched in there together. One or two of them had a guitar, and they were passing it around the room, and one of them had a drum, and they were kind of just doing worship songs in the room. It was kind of weird, but I remember looking across the room and seeing this guy in skinny jeans with a bullet belt and long dreadlocks halfway down his back and patches of bands I had never heard of on his denim jacket. And that was the man that I didn't know at the time would become my best friend, Vinton Jeff Bain.
That's right. So I first went to this house church because I met the owner of the house at church. We were just randomly talking and found out we both liked the same video games. And so we talked video games and he said, "Come over to my house and we have house church on these days." And I said, "Okay, I'll check it out." And these people became our community for the longest time and still are today.
Yeah, I remember on my very first night visiting, I was just kind of getting the measure of the room, seeing what everyone was like, what people were into, whether I belonged in that group at all.
Right.
And then you started quoting either C.S. Lewis or Zoe Kierkegaard.
It was Kierkegaard. I remember 'cause you told me
Kierkegaard.
this story before when I had kind of forgotten about it. You said the guy with the dreadlocks in the corner with spikes all over his jacket and patches everywhere. You thought, "Oh, I'm not going to get along well with him." And well, I'll just move on to the next person. But then I started quoting Kierkegaard and discussing what Kierkegaard said.
And it totally blew my mind. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on a second. I want to have a drink with this guy because he actually speaks my language. I had just graduated with my degree in biblical studies, and doing that type of conversation was my life. I thrived on that type of thing. And so I was really excited to get into knowing more of your story and more of where you had come from and what had brought you to where you are today. And it's been a fun journey learning all those things.
Right. And here we are, podcasting together.
Podcasting together.
Who could have known?
The friends that podcast together stay together.
That's right.
Or they get frustrated at each other and
run away from each other, I guess.
No, that'll never happen.
So, thank you to Dalton for those questions. If you'd like to hear more questions like that, like we said at the beginning, check out patreon.com/graphocast. That's patreon.com/graphocast. And for just as little as $1 a month, you can get access to that special feed. And if you want to donate more, you can get more bonuses on top of that. Also, I know people don't have a lot of money. If you wanted to just give $1 1 month and then cancel it, it would give you access to that questionnaire episode. You could listen to it and then cancel just $1 spent.
Absolutely no judgment here if you decide to do that.
So remember, we'll be coming back in 2 weeks from now discussing the Hamilton documentary on PBS that will be airing Friday, October 21st, 9 Eastern, 8 Central. And if you're west of us, I guess you're going to have to do the math yourself. And you can live tweet with us before that while it's actually airing. But that episode will be coming out the following Tuesday. And I just forgot that Dalton's last question had a second part.
Oh, secondary.
And I think this is a good second part.
A follow-up question.
Is, which one of us is Hamilton and which one's Burr?
Ooh. I'm going to have to wait for the answer on this one.
No, too late. I'm already waiting for it.
Oh, no. I feel like this podcast is actually ran by 2 Aaron Burrs.
I don't know. Maybe.
Am I Hamilton? I'm a little long-winded sometimes.
Well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a little impatient. So this is a hard question to answer. And I don't know that either of us are really Hamilton for sure. I don't know that either of us are Burr. I mean, I wouldn't kill you.
I hope not. If you had that in you, it's been lying in wait a long time.
Yeah, I'm willing to wait for it, I guess. I think we could just pick other people from the musical that we could be, though. I could see Washington in you.
Oh, thanks. That's one of the nicest things you've ever said to me. I don't know if I see that. I like that, though. I would say for you, you're a bit of the Marquis de Lafayette. You walk into any room and people absolutely love you. You're the energy of that room.
I can deal with this a lot.
Yeah. You're going to take that horse by the reins?
Yes.
Making redcoats redder with bloodstains?
And I'm never going to stop until I make him drop in. Yeah, scatter the remains and other things. I can't rap, guys. It's not going to happen. That's going to have to be the difference between Lafayette and I. I'll accept everything else, though.
Right, okay. On that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this short episode for you tonight. But if you have any answers to Dalton's question about which historical character should have their own musical, please send it to us. We would love to hear your thoughts. We would love to hear your ideas. And we would love to look into which particular historical character would have the best musical. Bonus points if you actually record yourself singing a song from said fake musical.
Yeah, definitely. bonus points if you want to answer his question about how Robbie and I met and write your own fan fiction and maybe sing a song from that fake musical.
Oh my goodness, this is getting out of hand.
I might just send you some goodies for that. You might get something in your mail, like some free prizes or something. I don't know.
That'd be pretty fantastic.
We'll probably play that one on air if you want to do that. I don't know. I can't make promises, but you'll get something. This episode is brought to you by our lovely supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/Graphocast. We've already said everything about that. I'm not going to repeat it again. You can get into contact with us. Contact@graphocast.com, Twitter @Graphocast, or personally, I'm @FleshEater.
And I'm @Alpha Knight.
We will see you in 2 weeks. This has been a Graphomania production. If you would like to hear more podcasts, go to graphocast.com, graphocast.com. Follow us on Twitter @Graphocast and like the Graphomania page on Facebook for news and updates.